then we can kind of just continue our conversation. I love, I like the way Rogan does it. Where just you're already in the conversation. There's no.
I love that.
Yeah, but I'm not Joe. I have a full head of hair and a lot of body fat.
That's the only difference. Yeah.
So that's basically the only those two things really. Welcome to Bropostles, the only podcast that only has one host. Apparently, my co-host. I usually have a co-host, Ethan. He's not here, Seamus. And today we're joined by Seamus from Freedom Toons. You guys probably know who he is. If you don't know who he is, look him up. Freedom Toons. He does short.
Do you know who I am?
Yeah,
you might.
Kind of a big deal.
I just start chewing people in the audience.
Yeah, that's a great way to make a.
How dare you? That's the best way to ingratiate yourself with an audience.
I'm doing you people a favor.
Just act like a way bigger deal than you are in every situation that you find yourself in. How to win friends and influence people.
I'm pretty sure that's chapter 1, right after ask for a small favor.
If that's right. If you say you're important, people will know you're important.
Exactly. My friend, one of my friends, Katie, she recommends that you just kind of, when you want to get to know someone, if you want to meet a famous person, you just go up to them and pretend that you've known them for a very long time. And she listened
unhealthy.
Now she has the advantage of she is kind of a famous person. She had a big Twitch stream for a while.
Okay.
But then it became difficult to be a woman on Twitch and keep your clothes on, so she stopped doing that.
Good for her. That was the smart decision. It's just this is funny. It's just difficult to be on Twitch unless you're Hassan Piker. He can do whatever he wants, and they will never ban him for anything. I understand everyone's listening to my podcast right now, but can you go watch Seamus's impression of Hassan Piker? It's kind of dead on. Thank you. It's actually really funny because I have never. I don't know that I have like the actual sound of his voice down, but I heard a couple of clips. Exactly, he's just very whiny, and so I just tried to be a whiny child, which was method acting for me. I acted really whiny for the 30 years before I made that video, just to really prepare for the role. And then I was really good at doing an impression.
You received a vision of Hassan Piker. You're like, I must prepare for this video.
I was like, how can I be as annoying as possible all the time for my entire life to prepare for this video? And based on the feedback I get from people, I achieved that.
You've achieved it. Seamus makes political cartoons. They're typically 2 to 5 minutes in length. How did you get started doing that? I know you haven't done political cartoons your whole life. But you have done art basically your whole life, right?
Yeah, well, I just really wanted to pick up chicks, and I was like, what do the ladies love? Cartoonists.
They love cartoonists?
Well, it's actually...
And politics.
Politics, they're so into it. And at the time, I was a libertarian. I was like, libertarian political cartoonist, bro? Are you kidding me? Like, save some ladies for the rest of us, bro.
Come on, man.
It's actually funny.
Want to talk about the social contract?
That's like my number one topic. And our first video actually was about a character called the Social Contractor. We still bring him back from time to time. But you were asking about how we got started. And it's funny because I've been drawing since I was a little kid, and I started teaching myself to animate probably when I was around 12 or 13. And then when I was 14, I started just doing these little like freelance gigs here and there, small stuff. And by the time I graduated high school, I knew I wanted to do this for the rest of my life. I knew that my dream was to make TV shows and movies and that type of thing. And I wanted to start by doing freelance work, putting stuff out on YouTube from time to time. And that's basically what I did. When I was 19, I started posting political cartoons on my YouTube channel. And that's where Freedom Toons actually started. And so that was 11 years ago now, which is it's just crazy to even think about the fact that much time has passed since I started doing this. But listen, it was a long journey. Like we've done between Freedom Toons and client work, it's been like well over 700 videos.
Wow.
So a pretty large archive there. And over the years, I just started to amass more and more help, as the channel grew. First, by the time I graduated college, it was in a place where I was able to survive off of it, which was insane. And I was really excited about that because I remember before graduating, it was like, I'm making enough money doing this that if I like Uber maybe 10 hours a week, I could probably use that, or like wait table somewhere. I could supplement what I'm making from this.
Imagine you call your Uber and it's the Freedom Toons guy.
It's the Freedom Toons guy. But this is the crazy thing is I was so blessed that by the time graduation actually came around, I was just able to afford to live off of Freedom Toons. plus some of the client work we were doing. It was never just Freedom Toons. I was always picking up freelance gigs here and there. And so it ended up continuing to grow, and I was able to bring different people on, one person at a time. Now we've got a team of between 6 and 8 people at any given time, some employees, some contractors who go in and out. And it's been an incredible journey. And we're just at the point where I mentioned earlier, I've always wanted to create longer programming, films, television. And part of that was because I was passionate about it. But another part of it was because I was well aware of the fact that the left totally dominated entertainment media, and enemies of God were essentially completely in control of the number one method for delivering story to people, which is actually a horrible state of affairs. I don't think people realize how bad that is. We take it for granted
that very often.
Yeah, but like the number one method for delivering story is dominated by people who hate you. They hate your way of life. They hate your family. And they've been slowly chipping away at your culture for decades through their propaganda. I always knew that that was something that I had to change. It was always something that I was interested in doing. And so now, after 11 years, over 700 videos, on my YouTube channel, having gained over 1 million subscribers and 290 million views with $0 spent on marketing, I'm confident that myself and my team are ready to take on the responsibility of creating larger projects. So we've launched Twisted Plots, which is an anthology series, kind of like Twilight Zone or Black Mirror, where each episode's a totally different story. And we've already got the first episode completely finished. So if you want to watch that, you can go over to twistedplots.com, support us. You'll get the full pilot. It's 25 minutes long. And we can't win the culture war without making culture. That's part of why it's always been my dream to do this. And it's also really important that when we do make culture, it's done well. And the story and the jokes deliver the message as opposed to ham-fisted monologues. Because what some people try to do, and unfortunately I've seen some conservatives do,
the Ayn Rand method.
Is I didn't mention anybody by name. But they'll sort of, and at least Ayn Rand, even though Ayn Rand had her flaws, her stories and characters still communicated what she was doing. I think some people now, they'll try to just make kind of a standard boilerplate show, but then a character goes on like a conservative rant every now and again. And that doesn't work. Like Jesus taught through parables, and his parable wasn't just some random story and then one guy owns the other character with the wrong view. It was like you learn from the story. And so that's how we've written this. And
Nazarene Carpenter destroys Pharisees with facts and logic.
And that's the thing, is he does, right? But in the different biblical narratives, even though that does happen, you learn from the behaviors, from the actions, from what happens, from like the actual thread of the story, what the moral is. And that's how the left has done it too. That's why they've been so successful in Hollywood. They give
one of my politics professors in 2011, when like Glee was coming out, he went to like a Glee watching party, which if you remember that fun little era of our shared cultural history.
And I just want to mention, I know I said that libertarian cartoonists like get all the ladies, but like guys who go to Glee watch parties, that's like we're neck and neck.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, they also get the fellas too, which is one problem. But he saw like an episode where the gay kid was like getting bullied and crying in the bathroom, and he was like, gay marriage will be legal within the decade. He like saw all his wife's friends crying, and it's like, yep, that's how it happens. It's little by little, and it's all, and then they create these fake worlds that mirror ours, and so you kind of have this different perspective of reality, and then that's why you have people that are like. That's why you have people that can say two completely opposite things that cannot possibly both be true, but we both fully believe it. Like someone on the left, someone on the right. You're like, yeah, obviously, like there are people who still genuinely believe that that feminism is not a dominant cultural belief, but it basically is. But there are people who are like,
it's not just it is. It's like, what is water?
Yeah.
Right? So and it's not just that feminism is the dominant cultural belief. Like things that we don't think are feminism are feminism. A lot of our egalitarian views on gender are like, well, listen, I'm all for equality in X, Y, and Z arena, but I'm not some feminist. It's like, no, but you are.
But that is what it is. Yeah. It's the constant overthrow of they get you to accept the premise and not the conclusion, but they don't need you to accept the conclusion. They just need you to accept the premise. Which is why I got in trouble a while back for saying that the Catholic Church isn't right wing. And because the Catholic Church is conservative in a broad sense of speaking, But like my honest opinion is that if you concede that there is a right and left wing, that the Catholic Church belongs to the right wing, you're conceding that you're conceding two equal sides. And in the left right paradigm, the left, it's tilted to the left. So you're
that they defined the paradigm, right? But I hear what you're saying. Because
you see what I'm saying?
I talk about this all the time. No, you're right. It's complicated, but I talk about this all the time. Where do we get the term left from, right? The left wing in the French Revolution. I mean, this is why we have a left-right dichotomy that saturates the world today or defines the world today. And what was the left doing? They were abusing nuns. They were murdering priests. They were killing kings. They were doing everything that they possibly could to destroy the influence of the Catholic Church and sabotage the interests of the Catholic Church. And so when people say like, well, what is the right wing? The right wing in certain countries has not necessarily been Catholic, obviously, but the left has always existed to destroy Catholicism. A country with a strong, healthy right-wing movement is going to have a Catholic right wing. But just because a movement calls itself right-wing doesn't mean it's Catholic. And this is part of where people get confused, especially in the United States, because this very broad coalition of people have formed over the past decade who want to push back against the left. But because this coalition is not rooted firmly in Catholicism, the angle of attack can't be strategized as well. Because, well, obviously, pornography is one of the tools used by the left to maintain cultural dominance, to keep men weak, to control the population. Okay, but there's a lot of people who are now part of the quote unquote right who will tell you you're some kind of Nazi for wanting to ban pornography. So it's complicated, but I think a way of understanding it is like the left is just fundamentally anti-Catholic. That doesn't mean that the right is Catholic or is pro-Catholic.
Sure. And I think the way that some Catholics have interpreted that, even myself in the past, has been like, well, because the right wing isn't perfect, therefore we ought to like remove ourselves from the conversation. But over time, it's become more and more apparent that that's a really bad idea. I think especially over the past couple. I mean, this past year, maybe 4 years. If you've been paying attention, it's been the past decade. But it's like it's become incredibly apparent that like it's not just like a fun little game. Like, but I feel like when I was in high school, maybe when I was in high school, the culture war was like a fun little like, well, I don't think gay people should get married. Well, I think you're sexist. Well, I don't care what you think. No. But debate now it's club. Like, and now it's like it's debate club. But now it's like, I think gay people should be married. Well, I don't really think bang. Like that's kind of the problem.
Yes,
exactly. It's getting a little hot and heavy, and but also I think that the out of all of the, at least the right now, more so than it was 15 or 10 years ago, is not indifferent to religion anymore.
Yes.
It seemed like when I was a kid, both sides were relatively indifferent to religion. And one side more, and now it's become openly hostile versus open. And I think that it would be a mistake for Catholics to remove themselves when there is a political movement that is obviously so open to it, you know?
Yeah. I totally agree. I think that we're fallen creatures, obviously, so people are not always going to be able to get the message or fully grasp exactly what time it is, to use a popular phrase. But I still do believe that your average person, if they're being honest with themselves and truly seeking the truth, are going to gravitate towards whatever ideological system seems to have demonstrated the best predictive power. And every single thing that the crazy Christian theocrats said would happen if we legalized gay marriage and pushed society in a more quote unquote progressive direction, all of those things have happened. And so I think because of that, many people are gravitating towards religion. They're going, oh, wait, like my crazy Christian right-wing evangelical parents were totally correct about the fact that they were not going to stop with gay marriage, that was never the plan. Well, but of course, what they miss is like people say they were never going to stop with gay marriage. It's like, bro, no, gay marriage was like one stop along the way. They were never going to stop with artificial contraceptives being legal. It started much earlier. So if you're just trying to roll it back to before gay marriage was legalized, we're going to end up back at the bottom of the hill again. We're going to end up back at the bottom of the slope. Like
that's the accepted premise.
Yeah.
Thing that we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, oh, well, as long as we roll back gay marriage, it's like, well, if artificial contraceptive methods are still popular and legal, then no, we're never going to roll it back.
It's that one thing leads to another. If you had told, even like when Pope Paul VI issued Humanae Vitae, that was I read a really interesting article about how that was actually the spirit of Vatican II. That was when that all started happening with like priest dissenting and the church becoming more lib, and like the church, the Land of Lakes agreement and all that nonsense. It was actually because of the rejection of artificial contraception. And he said in Humanae Vitae things were going to get worse, and people were like, even Father Mike Scanlon, the darling of Franciscan University, the guy who founded the whole thing, he later recanted and changed his statement, thank God. But everyone was against it. They were like, this is awful. Everyone already believes this is okay. But he like saw it coming. He was like, wait a second, if you remove this, then you're going to open the levee. And that's exactly what happened. So Pope St. Paul VI vindicated once again.
Well, we saw where it started with that, and then you actually you look at the transgender movement, and some people are very confused, and it seems like it fell from the sky, but it's actually just a logical and horrifying conclusion to rejecting the telos of the human body. Yeah. You decided you were just going to use your sex organs for your pleasure and not for unity and procreation, and you were not going to constrain your behavior surrounding them. All right, well, God's going to withhold certain graces, and you're going to see how that goes for you when it's taken to its final conclusion. It has been people literally removing healthily functioning organs.
The organs, yeah.
Like removing the organ that they were idolizing in the first place. It's biblical. Yeah. Like there's actually something. If somebody wrote that as a story, scholars would debate whether it was even possible for people to behave that way, right? It's like, and it's so clear.
Yeah. And I think for a while, like I was very passionate about this in high school, in college. I wrote and read a lot about the theology of the body, which is like it's a bad title for a really great book. It's an okay title for a good book, but the transgender movement had kind of just started peeking its head above the horizon, and it was kind of a pet issue when I talked about it. People were like, "Oh, that's kind of the extreme. That's kind of the crazy." And what 5 years later, it's hanging in the White House. It's like that. I didn't even see that coming. But I'm just surprised at how quick things got out of control. And I think that was an error. I think that it was or maybe it was always going to happen. If you get to that point, people are going to be like, "You're cutting people's what off?" Like that's kind of crazy. Why are major hospitals doing this? I don't know. Maybe that was always going to be a wake-up call. But
part of we're fortunate in the United States because it's such a large and diverse nation. I always love to say diversity is our strength. That's my little catchphrase.
That's one of the things that I've heard you say.
That's one of the things I always say. But in all seriousness, it's a very large country, and communication is very highly and closely linked. If this was a situation where it was just some tiny little nation that went in this direction, as opposed to small pockets in a larger nation trying to lead the whole nation in a specific direction, I don't know that the backlash would have happened the way that it did. But I think there were enough parts of the country left that were still somewhat healthy that people were able to push back against it effectively.
That's good. So I did want to ask you this question. So
sure.
You talked about conservative art. You talked about art just in general. In your mind, what makes something good art, as opposed like not just the negative, like, oh, it's not ham-fisted, it's not preachy. What makes a good story?
Well, firstly, it has to be an immersive experience. There can't be anything that takes you out of it where you realize that you're being preached at, or you feel like you're being talked down to. The illusion can't be broken. And this is something that obviously doesn't just apply to ideological underpinnings in the story. This applies to things like the suspension of disbelief. Obviously, things are going to happen in the story that couldn't happen in real life, but are you able to present them to me in an effective enough way where it doesn't trigger whatever in my brain needs to be triggered for me to realize that I'm actually watching something and forget that I'm an audience member. Or actually, I should say, remember that I'm an audience member and that these things happening in front of my face aren't actually happening.
Yeah.
So that's a really important part of it. It's kind of like a magic trick in a certain sense. There are certain ways you have to distract your audience from what your punchline is or from what the trick is. And if you do it seamlessly enough, for comedy, you get a laugh. For drama, you get a tear. Whatever it is you're aiming for. For suspense, you get a scare. But if you're clumsy about it and you reveal your hand, you say too many words in the setup and you give away the punchline, well, people aren't going to be able to enjoy it. And so I'm a firm believer, as Christians, as Catholics, it's not just important for us to exist within the religious sphere. Like, we have to be in the world, but not of the world. And that means when we are making art, that means when we are making films or television shows, we got to make sure we're making good films and television shows. We can't just hope that people are going to go see it because we're Catholic and they're Catholic. It has to be something that's able to reach a wide audience. So it's a little bit difficult to define in such a broad way. But if you were to ask about like specific films that I think are very well done, I can speak to that a little bit. I can talk a little about film analysis, how I think truth comes out in the story, because ultimately I do think that's the most important thing. You're using a medium which is in some sense, quote unquote, deceptive because it's a bunch of flickering images on a screen and people think that there's actual movement and you're playing music that doesn't actually exist diegetically. And so a lot of pieces have to come together in a way which is seamless and again, doesn't give away that some hand constructed this.
Yeah.
God made all of reality and there are moments where people forget that. Because they're immersed. Now, in a good, if you have a good relationship with God, you should be able to maintain an awareness of his hand in things. But notice that he put things together in a way where truth is there for those who are seeking to find it. He's not hiding it from people who are looking for it and trying to do his will, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But
he doesn't want you he doesn't want you to try and like calculate out. He doesn't want you to even try and figure out the plot. Yeah, exactly.
Like there are certain, you sort of have your little slice of it, and God is constantly directing specific information towards you, like based on what it is you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to see. And I think the art of filmmaking, anytime we do anything creative, we're participating in God's creativity. He made us to make with him, right? We have the ability to generate new products, works of art, experiences. And so there's two principles that I try to consider in light of that when I'm writing. And I hope I don't offend anyone as I say this, but I'm going to have to, as a negative, just refer to some bad Christian art.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So you won't offend anyone. They're not.
Yeah. I don't claim to be able to understand the interplay between grace and free will. I know there's a huge debate about this in the Thomists and the Molinists. And I remember reading Ludwig Ott and trying to make sense of the difference between the way grace is described when the person does act on it and doesn't act on it. It's way above my pay grade, but I do know that when I'm writing, I might have a specific idea in mind. I might have a specific moral in mind, but it's important to keep in mind who the character is that I'm writing for and allow the character, based on what I know of them, to direct their behavior and therefore the plot, and not just to go, this would be the right thing to do in this situation. This is how the character should act. Every now and again, you can have a character do something out of pocket or out of left field. But mostly when you're writing, you're staying true to the character instead of having them do whatever random thing came to the author's mind. Yeah. But even in that, because you're the author, you're still expressing your story. And the point I'm making with this is a lot of really bad Christian art is written by Calvinists who believe that God is writing our story in a way where he is just like putting the dialogue directly in our mouth, regardless of what it is. And the characters aren't actually making the decisions. And I think that that's why their art is bad. I actually think that's a big part of why their art is bad, because they're not respecting the character as a person with agency. And in part, I believe it's because on a deep level, they don't believe that that's how the universe works. But as a Catholic who believes in free will, I think it more naturally translates to saying, regardless of whether I agree with it, like my permissive will for this story is for the character to do this.
That's a cool way to look at writing. It tracks with what it tracks with what I know about The Office. We're millennials here, somewhat.
Of course, we're right on the cusp. And I got to be honest, The Office is phenomenal. I can't try to pretend I'm cooler than.
You can't hipster The Office. It comes across as unnecessarily contrarian, but they would have this, they have these characters that are cartoonish at times, but there's really never, even at the most ridiculous, Kevin spills a pot of chili. Yeah. Even the most ridiculous character, it's even when they surprise you, they had this principle that's like you can't have a character improve or change like by 50%. You have to have him improve or change by 5%. So when they were like writing off Michael on The Office, you'll notice the episode in season 7 leading up to it, he changes 5% until he's the kind of guy that can leave. So he has like a little moment with Aaron, he has a little moment with Jim, he has a little, like, all of a sudden the punchline of the episode is that he's grown. And you don't see that in seasons 1 through 6. He's always the same guy at the end. But they're like, we have to have this guy grow and get out. And so they start letting him go. And then in addition to that, the actors themselves, they take on a life of their own. People think that The Office is more improv than it is. People like to think that more things are improv than they are. But some of it was. And a lot of these characters took on a life of their own. So I see what you're saying.
Yeah, well, and like, it's not to say, again, Paul had that instant conversion, right? I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm not saying that can never be good storytelling. But what I am saying is, on a certain level, you do let the characters tell you what they're going to do. But again, it's not some like bizarre schizophrenic relationship where there's this other mind that actually exists. You are expressing your will in a certain sense. Part of the reason I point that out, though, is because I firmly believe that we are participating in God's creativity anytime we make anything. And the better we emulate him, the better our creation is going to be. Yeah. And I do believe that is, though I don't dare say that I could understand the mind of God, based on my understanding of Catholic theology, God has a permissive will and we make decisions.
Yeah. It's fascinating that you take that approach to just like 2 to 5 minute cartoons.
Well, and it's funny because for the 2 to 5 minute cartoons, a lot of what we have to do is that kind of first thing where it's like, we just got to throw some jokes at the wall. We got to make the point. And the character, of course, does stay in character. We can't just have any character say anything, but especially as we're, as I'm writing longer things. So I have screenplays I've written for films. I also have screenplays for the show that we're producing written. As I mentioned, the pilot episode's already finished. And an important thing in writing that was that component of it. Like, there's a lot of really silly stuff that happens and a lot of off the wall jokes. But at the heart of it, there is a protagonist, and I needed to make sure that he, wasn't the like self-insert who just goes around and owns the libs, that he was like an actual person who you could believe exists and who does have flaws and like is kind of silly in certain ways, but who ultimately has the truth. And you got to give him a reason. Like, why does he have the truth? You have to write from there. And so that's what I would say has informed the writing process for longer projects. Whereas for Freedom Toons, there's a certain joy in just being able to make a situation really funny and take something that's happening in the world and exaggerate it in certain ways. Sometimes you don't even need to exaggerate it because things are so crazy. Throw as many jokes in there as you can. But yeah, even in that, though there's less of a like rigorous need to keep things in character, it still feels cheap if something happens that's totally random or for no reason, or a character isn't true to themselves.
Like a dancing dog.
Well, exactly, because the anti-woke dog always wants to dance. And he doesn't need to own anyone. He doesn't need to argue it. He just doesn't care. He's there. He's having a good time.
That is the dancing dog. The anti-woke dog is a self-insert in Freedom.
That is my character. I just want to dance, as we all know. I was a secret fan of Glee, obviously. No, like anti-woke dog, he's not like a theater kid kind of dancing guy. He's like just a cool guy who's confident and dances because he is so confident and he is so upbeat.
Yeah, this is important.
It's very important. This is my analysis of anti-woke dog.
It's actually probably one of the people don't realize this is actually the heart. The anti-woke dog is the heart and soul of Freedom Toons. I think it was your most recent one as of now. The transgender cartoonist, I think, is a great anti-example. but the character itself is a great anti-example. But I think what was funny, you were talking about like the audience member can't expect the punchline. I was impressed that you were able to make a short about not expecting the punchline when the punchline was expected. Like that was clever. I liked that.
Well, thank you. And that kind of gets into the art of filmmaking as presentation as opposed to just the writing, like the actual execution. This is I'm not comparing myself to Shakespeare, to be clear before I say
please
this.
Please do.
I am the modern day Shakespeare over at Freedom Toons. If you did that, which means yes,
they're going to be showing my shorts at the Globe.
No, listen.
Strange.
Shakespeare was a black woman. I would never pretend to steal the voice of a woman of color. All scholarship shows that this is true. So I can't claim to be Shakespeare, but I'm like the white male version of Shakespeare, kind of, is how I like to look at it. Is I'm like the white male version of Shakespeare. And so,
Ethan, I'm thinking of a number between 12 and 14. Which number do you think it is?
You've not left me a lot of options. In fact, you've left me an infinite number of options.
No. It's an integer. It's a whole integer, and it's between. No. It is a whole integer. I'm thinking of a whole integer between 12 and 14, and it is neither 12 nor 14.
Integer. I hardly know her. I'd like to thank the freedomgroup.co for sponsoring this episode of Bropostles. 13 is the number.
Yes.
We've had 13 people sign up that are already seeing success from working with the Freedom Group. You can join your fellow Bropostles.
Bropostles. It's already a word.
if you don't know what the Freedom Group is they help you get rid of not just your porn usage, but the cravings for pornography in a year, or they work for you for free until you do. So if your life has been severely hindered by pornography usage or addiction of any kind, talk to these guys. It is real group accountability. It's real psychology. It's real, what's the other word? It's not psychology.
It's real. It's real, baby.
It's real. It's real. These are all doctors. These are all like medical doctors who have studied this, who are very good at it. Coaches who are trained to help you get free. You get put into a cohort of other men, so you're not by yourself. You also have one-on-one coaching. There is intense accountability. And it gets rid of it's like the craziest thing ever. It's like guys get in, they get out, and it's gone. It's done because they've had this intense program. They work with you for free until it's gone. So there's a maximum cost that it could be, but that's the most you'll ever pay.
Yeah, and you're guaranteed to
get free of pornography. So if you've been struggling, you've been putting it off, go to thefreedomgroup.co right now. Get a discovery call with these guys. They were on the podcast a few months ago. Go listen to the episode, but they're great. Thank you to thefreedomgroup.co for sponsoring this episode of Bropostles.
When I was writing, I'm sorry.
That was good.
One thing, this is something someone else pointed out to me. I think it might have even been Evan Amato tweeted this a while ago, but he was talking about Romeo and Juliet and how, even though, of course, with the story, you do want people to be caught off guard. Part of the brilliance of what Shakespeare did there is he gave you a spoiler at the beginning. He went, spoiler alert. Never, has there been a tale of more, what is it, woe than Juliet and her Romeo? And then everyone went, spoiler alert. Everyone in the theater was super upset that it started that way, but they still enjoyed it because.
But they were like, when a black woman speaks, I sit down and listen. That's what they said.
They said I didn't watch Romeo and Juliet. I sat my white butt down and got educated. That's what they said. And so that's the kind of thing that a white male could never hope to do. But the point is, with that cartoon, obviously people knew sort of what the punchline was going to be after the first one, that it was going to be random acts of violence. And then where you subvert expectations and try to do something silly that might catch people off guard is present the reactions to it in a specific way. This is part of what I had to do throughout the first Trump administration, actually, because I felt that the jokes about Trump were all really obvious and everyone had already made them. And so to me,
did you know that he's kind of orange? That's interesting.
I heard that
a little more.
I did. And I considered that, and I did. And so we did color him in orange, it's just obligatory.
You have to do that.
You have to do that. But I ended up finding much more success and having much more fun lampooning people's reactions to Trump, because everyone was already doing Trump jokes. And even though his behavior is unpredictable in certain ways, like any Trump parody is just going to have Trump do something silly, but it's always played in a way where everyone else is the straight man. I'm like, but Trump's adversaries aren't straight men. They're gay men. And they're all like completely out of pun intended. But seriously, like in all seriousness, Trump's adversaries are unhinged. Generally, like, yes, there are some people who take issue with some of the things he does. I'm not saying anyone who has criticism of him is bad, blah, 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 blah. But my point is just that when something is very expected, you can still play with it. You just have to find a way to slip something unexpected into the negative space. Maybe you'd call it the things that you don't normally consider as part of the traditional setup punchline.
Yeah, you got to take a step and kind of take yourself out of it. Be like, you know what, I do have criticisms of this, but you know what, I don't want to pile on to, okay, like maybe, for example, I don't like the East Wing being demolished. But it's like, all right, that's kind of overplayed. Let's step back and maybe lampoon another side of this that people haven't considered. But even like making fun of, people are already making fun. The problem with this time around is I think the right is a little better at lampooning the other side, and so you run into this problem where you're like, oh crap, now both sides are criticizing, so what do you do?
Exactly. It's probably been a little bit more difficult to do parody material surrounding his administration in the second term. But listen, I got a lot of great juice out of the Biden years. The things they were doing were horrible, but man, Biden was just an endless supply of jokes. Even he was difficult though, because it's only funny to have someone babble incoherently the first couple times. You can't keep doing that. And so one thing that we ended up doing to keep things interesting, one thing I did was
make him an evil genius.
We did make him an evil genius eventually, actually. But before that, what I started doing, and by the way, before he was even elected president, I felt the joke that he was senile was already overplayed. We'd done it so many times. I think we'd only done like 2 or 3 videos with it, but it was like, I can't keep writing this. It's not funny anymore. So what I did was I would just find actual clips of him. And then moving forward, we just used actual Biden audio for pretty much everything he said in the cartoons. And that was funny, dude. That stuff was funny because he really said those things. He would really,
and you're like oh my gosh,
I have Biden quotes archived. I have Biden quotes memorized that you would not even believe he said if I stated them out loud. I've sifted
off the top of your head. So what's one?
I spent my summer going to the black parts of town trying to get black men to understand it is not unmanly to wear a condom.
Actual Biden quote. Actual Biden quote.
That's incredible.
There's more gems, dude. There's more. I might have the corn pop.
What a shame. Speech. What a shame that he doesn't have the juice that Trump has. We could have had. I mean, like,
imagine. He had so many great quotes. One thing we ended up doing too we did a video where I took a bunch of his quotes because I was very familiar with them because I had done like years worth of cartoons sifting through his audio. So we did a cartoon where I had different famous orators from history saying Biden quotes. So like Martin Luther King Jr., like, poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids, all time. Yeah, like stuff. Everyone knows that one. But then other things he would say that maybe I won't say here because I don't want to get you in any trouble. But like just wildly offensive, wildly offensive. Where you go like, this sounds like,
which is just like your slightly racist grandma. Like that's who was president, which is great. And
but
you can't like parody that.
It gets hard. But I guess the point is that was funny about the Biden administration. The other funny thing was everyone trying to pretend that like all of the people who are very invested in their reputation as serious, educated individuals just being surrounded with that and having to pretend it was normal. That was a fascinating thing to see, because the thing about Trump is he had some people in his administration who were invested in appearing as either moderates or quote unquote reasonable people. And you got the feeling that they kind of smugly felt like they were playing Trump. Whereas you also had people in the Trump administration who really were outcasts, who would never have found a place in any other political administration, who were in the Trump administration. So there wasn't the same incongruity. But with the Biden administration, it was just a lot of very serious people who had to pretend this was a very serious president, who had to pretend that it was like very serious and normal to have some bizarre gender confused person with breast implants flashing people on the White House lawn, who had to pretend it was like completely normal for the president to stammer every 5 minutes and not be able to get through a single sentence without forgetting where he was. All very normal stuff. Yeah, to me, that was part of the comedy. And that was a big part of the comedy of his administration, was the incongruity between how important it was for these people to be seen as serious and how ridiculous everything happening around them.
That's a perfect situation for a comedian. It's what someone really, really wants you to think they're a very serious person.
Yes, exactly.
That's just, it's like gotcha at that moment. You're like, you've fallen into my trap, because it's because none of us really are serious. I try not to take myself too seriously on Twitter at all, because I'm posting about theology on Twitter. You know, that in and of itself is kind of a goofy thing to do. But yeah, it's so easy to try. You know, I'm a thought leader. I'm a think tank.
I'm an influencer.
You know, I'm an influencer. It's so easy. There's a bunch of, oh my gosh, don't get me started on like the navel gazing with Catholic influence. Should we have Catholic influencers? That's why I wrote an article about it that was like, who cares? We have them. Like, who cares about that? You know?
Yeah, that's also a fair point. Like, listen, man, there's going to be some Catholics who are more influential than others, I guess. I don't know. What do you want me to? I guess there's an argument to be like, what are people saying that like the church should like censor some of these people? Because I wouldn't be totally opposed to that in certain circumstances, but
absolutely,
like what you need like a church certification to, I don't even know how you would impose that, like a church certification to speak publicly on matters of faith and morals. I don't know.
Once upon a time there was one. It's really hard to get one now.
Mm-hmm.
But we almost,
maybe we need
podcast almost got one. It's called a censor laborum, and we almost got one, but they had us. This is a really funny like podcast lore. Most people don't know this, even listeners. This is years ago, but they sent a bunch of transcripts of our podcast. They sent our podcast like overseas to be transcribed. We all of a sudden got a bunch of listeners in Japan, and they sent transcripts of our podcast to a review board must have been at the USCCP, and they denied us a censor laborum. But it didn't change anything at all.
Was it because you said Shakespeare was a black woman?
You know, that perhaps having a whole 3-month arc diving into Shakespeare was a black woman might have been a strategic error on our part.
And
but,
why it's fundamentally important exactly. And why it's important for every Catholic to know. Yeah, we can't fight the culture war with untruth.
Yeah. So that was definitely part of it. Yeah. So the man, I just there's so much to go into. I'm thankful that you're at least very thoughtful of this, because it's for too long it's been kind of a Christian art and conservative art in general has just been kind of lackadaisical. There's that trope of like,
I appreciate that you think I'm thoughtful about it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, at least maybe you have thought about it, but to maybe shift gears a little bit. So like you're Catholic. You grew up, from what I understand, you grew up Catholic, and you were not Catholic for a period of your life. Is that correct?
You could say that. Yeah. I mean, like when I was younger.
Look, I'm going off of a crowdsourced bio of you. You know, like.
Did you ask Grok?
I did at Grok. Please generate me a video of Seamus not being Catholic, and
it did, and that's AI. No, I really. The thing is, I was basically non-Catholic for a while, because in my late teens I fell away, and I wasn't taking the church's teaching seriously. I think. At best, you could say I was a lukewarm Catholic, but there were moments where I described myself as an atheist, like to people I was very close to. I think it wasn't like a public thing where I was like, but I was like, yeah, like I don't think I really believe. Yeah. I got to that point, so I really was not, at the very least, I was not a very good Catholic.
Sure.
And then when I was 20, I had a reversion to the faith, and then when I was 23 or 24, I started attending the Latin Mass regularly and started reading more about church history and tradition. And that was really when I started to move away from libertarianism. Actually, that's when I started to learn more about what the church had historically had to say about like the relationship between rights and duties, as well as the role of civil authorities in promoting the common good and preventing certain evils that libertarians
start with.
So there was a book. I don't know if I should mention on air because I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but I will. I understand who the person I'm about to mention is loaded, and I'm not endorsing everything he did, but there was an archbishop by the name of Lefebvre, and there was a book that there was a book somebody gave me from him, and it's listen, I'm not trying to be too controversial here. I don't think what he did was good, obviously, but the book was really good. I hate to say this. I don't even remember. I think it's like not everything is like some things are black and white. Is the subtext? I think it's on. I actually don't even remember the name of this book.
So I think Lefebvre is a great resource for this, and here's why the board, the count.
See, now the church is never going to approve. By the way, now the church is never going to approve my request to be.
I think you go ahead. I think the cartoon about the transgender man stabbing someone in the face gets you before this does. I gotta be honest with you, man. I don't think you're speaking at a Steubenville conference anytime in the next 10 years. unless something changes, bro. I gotta tell you. But I will say, so Lefebvre was on the drafting committee for Dignitatis Humanae, which is the best Catholic social teaching, most influential and most controversial Catholic social teaching document to come out of Vatican II. Now he signed off on it. So like that, he signed off on it. That's the big controversial one that people don't like. And someone's probably yelling at their car right now because I'm all pro Dignitatis Humanae. But his interpretation of it, I think, because he was from the more continental anti-liberal side of things. Now, he was excommunicated by another guy on that committee. Yeah. John Paul II was on the committee, yep. And then an American was on the committee. So it was the guy who started America Magazine was on the committee. So the history of Dignitatis Humanae is diverse. Crazy.
It's a diverse group of people, and I always say diversity is our strength.
I have heard you say that at least twice, perhaps just in quotes, but so that guy basically, John Courtney Murray, he came back to America and was like, the Catholic Church has endorsed the United States Constitution as dogmatic. Basically, that was his kind of he was under the impression, or at least gave people the impression, whether maliciously or not, that the American conception of religious freedom was now dogmatic. Lefebvre didn't like that. Most American trads don't like that. It's not true, in my professional opinion, my very serious opinion. But no, I don't think it's. Oh, we lost Seamus.
Oh no, I'm back.
Seamus is back. He briefed. Never mind. So there's some. I just censor laborum to myself. So I don't think it's that bad that you read a Lefebvre book and got into Catholic social teaching through him.
Well, it was, and that wasn't just that. There were also a lot of like resources online.
Sure.
Basically, it was a lot of reading in a lot of different places. It wasn't one specific area, but that is a book that stands out to me. And I also, at the time, I was listening to like a lot of Sensus Fidelium and Father Ripperger, and I'm not even going to point to like a specific video they did that maybe could have instructed me on libertarianism, because I don't think that it was a specific video I saw that changed my perspective on it. Actually, this is a funny story. Probably in like 2019, when I was in this position, Matt Fradd was speaking at a church near where I lived, and we didn't know each other at the time. I think he'd seen some of my cartoons. We began speaking and realized like, I'd seen some of my stuff. And so we were mutual fans, but I was telling him, I used to be really, really libertarian, and like, I don't know anymore. And this was really scary for me, actually, because my career had been built on this to a certain degree. Like a lot of people, and I think by this point, a lot of people just kind of wanted to see the satirical cartoons. But I was like, really thinking about this, because I was like, am I allowed to be libertarian? Like, have I been wrong about libertarianism? And is this like a serious matter? And is my soul at risk if I keep promoting this? And I talked to Matt Fradd about this after his conference. I shook his hand and I said, hey, so I'm a Catholic YouTuber, and I'm like a libertarian and a pretty staunch one. And the more I've been reading about church history and tradition, the more I'm wondering if libertarianism is actually compatible with Catholicism in the purest sense. And he said, well, the Catechism says that civil authorities must prevent the production and distribution of pornography. And I was like, well, that's pretty not libertarian right there. Yeah. Matt, that's if there's anything I would say sounds pretty not libertarian.
Yep. I was talking to a guy about libertarianism and a preferential option for the poor. And he was like, that's socialism. That's not in Leo the 13th. You've blasphemed. And I'm like, no, Leo the 13th in Rerum Novarum talks about the government redistributing goods. Now, he doesn't mean communism.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and we know that like even moderate forms of socialism are not allowed. But the government, a social safety net. The part of what's so tricky though is like, exactly. Our understanding of this in the United States is very different. But still, point is, Matt Fradd said that to me, really got me thinking. And he was very nice. He was,
he's a great guy.
He is a good dude. He was like, I'm very glad God made you. I was like, thank you.
That's nice, Matt.
Yeah, he's very
sweet.
That was the first time I ever met him. Yeah, he's a friend now, but it's just funny that your first impression of somebody. But the point I was making is, so I started to move more towards like kind of like the religious conservatism that I held when I was younger, but with a much more robust understanding and a better formed understanding of the interplay between my faith and my politics. When I was like a little kid, I wrote a letter to George Bush telling him to invade Ireland to get the Muslims out. So I was pretty right wing. It's a true story.
George Bush, please help us.
George W.
Us, George Bush.
And
Bush.
You know what? He wrote me back, actually.
No way. That's great.
I'm already busy with some other stuff, but no, it was like one of those boilerplate letters you get back from the White House,
Yeah.
But that's what's
nice.
I was in like third grade. And I wrote him that letter.
That's so
I was conservative as a kid, I guess you could say. And
yeah.
I think I moved. And then, just this last year, I wrote Donald Trump a letter and asked him to invade Ireland to get the Muslims out. So we come full circle.
Look, I told George he didn't do it. I told him, and look what happened, man.
I've been writing every week for the last 20 years. And you people, I knew that Obama was too much of a Muslim from Kenya to do it. But I thought maybe Joe Biden, the Irish Catholic, maybe. I know he's not a practicing Catholic, but maybe he'd have sympathy. No.
Hey, he got Roe v. Wade overturned, under his administration.
That's why.
So that's his one.
Absolutely right. People forget that. Biden specifically asked for that. Come on, man. Biden forgot that he did that. He
did. That's unfortunate. He's forgotten many things. I didn't even know there was a stage 5, to be honest, until that happened. And that's anyway.
He was crazy. Yeah, Biden was. I could talk about him all day, man. His corn pop speech is like my Gettysburg Address. That is my favorite presidential speech. His corn pop speech is my Gettysburg Address. That is the most.
I don't remember this.
You don't know the corn pop speech?
I don't. I might be the only person listening to you right now that doesn't.
I learned a lot, and I learned that it makes a difference. And this was the diving board area over there, and you fell off, you hit your head on the darn cement. And Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. And back in those days, you don't know this? None of this rings a bell?
No.
Oh my gosh! Back in those days, you had to show off things have changed. You had pomade in your hair. You had to wear a bathing cap. Biden, when he was campaigning in 2019, gave this whole speech and told this whole story about a guy named Corn Pop who threatened him with a straight razor when he was a lifeguard. It's like, it is the most important thing
the most
Joe
important
Biden ever
speech.
said. Dude, yes, you guys, if you haven't seen it, I made a video where we just put animated visuals to Joe Biden's Corn Pop speech. We just clipped his audio and we just drew his Corn Pop speech. It's like one of the best things ever, dude. Joe Biden's Corn Pop free
content. That's free content there.
I got a lot of that under him, dude.
You don't got to pay any.
And then USAID got cut, and now I don't have free content anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, he was fun. He was, we really do got to pray for his soul. But he was funny. I'll give him that.
So, a story about Joe Biden. So, one of the holiest men that I know that is now a priest. He was part of a delegation of seminarians that got to meet with Vice President Biden back during the Obama administration, and it was just a wave and smile. But the seminarian, he took the opportunity to be like, you need to do something about abortion. Like, you need to stop this. And Biden went on this whole we really got to separate church and state and all this stuff. Yeah. And my seminarian friend just stood up and walked over to him, and Secret Service is freaking out. And he just gives him a hug. And he whispered something in his ear and didn't tell me what it was. Wouldn't say what it was. And Biden was kind of just staring at the floor, and they left.
Wow.
I know. Yeah. Wow. So I have hope for Biden because of that story.
Crazy. Yeah. God bless him for doing that.
I have a feeling that that story is going to become better known when this priest is inevitably canonized. If people from Orlando know who I'm talking about, they're probably rolling their eyes, but this guy's a really holy dude.
That feels like probably a better strategy than doing cartoons making fun of him, but at the same time,
the church has many parts. The church is a body with many parts. You know what I mean? We gotta have a sphincter.
Humility is knowing your place and taking it.
Yeah. We also gotta have middling podcasters. That's what we gotta have too. So that's the role that I play.
It's necessary. We would have known that story if you hadn't told it. So
that's true. We're sending things out into the world.
That brings us full circle on the importance of story.
Absolutely. It's powerful. I mean, narrative, the one thing the postmoderns get right is that reality is constructed by a narrative.
That's
and
right.
The problem is they take a left turn instead of the right turn. They go, because reality is a narrative, we can make it whatever we want and nothing matters. It should be reality is a narrative, therefore everything is so important.
Like someone's actually telling the story.
Yeah,
and for me, I've always been very fascinated by story. I've always loved stories. And I know one evidence people will use for God, and it's good evidence, is just material reality. How could any of this exist without a creative mind behind it? To me, I think just as fascinating is how the story of reality could exist, because it's not like this matter just exists, timelessly, and there isn't a sequence of events. Like there is clearly some story being authored here.
Yeah.
And but I think you're right. The postmodernists, they took it another direction and went, there's clearly a story here. I get to define what the story is. I get to make it up.
And if you have the conversation, I mean, one of my close friends is, was kind of dabbling with the trans stuff at the peak of it. And I was talking to her about it, and she was talking about gender roles, and she was talking about like social constructs and how, the gender is a social construct and all that stuff. And I asked her, I was like, what's stopping us from just keeping if everyone agreed,
exactly,
if everyone all of a sudden decided, and she was like, I was like, can you tell me why one is better than the other? And she couldn't. And no one can. Because a postmodern can't, because even though they know that something is deep down, the academic postmoderns will hem and haw, and they'll tell you why, they'll do what that guy did in the What is a Woman, where like they'll just turn the question back on you and try to avoid it.
Why do you care so much?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Why do you care so much? But the people who are you're friends with, I think you can start to chip away at that by asking that question, because they are, at least if they're in your friend group, they're probably not too far gone. Anyway, I'm a big like believer in evangelization, and so I want to make sure that people aren't too far gone. Just because a lot of them want to kill you doesn't mean your friends do.
Exactly. And ideally, if they do, they're not very good friends.
Yes. Yeah.
No, that's just my opinion. I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers.
No,
probably should
my opinion.
Friends with people who want to kill you.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, this is important, and story does matter. And the stories we tell ourselves matter, and they can't just be infinitely redefined. And part of the reason we know this is because there are certain stories that just aren't satisfying. Even when Hollywood has told stories that promoted a bad moral, they had to have enough in it that promoted a positive moral in order for it to work. So oftentimes you would have the story of a hero doing the right thing and saving people, but he would fornicate or commit adultery or do drugs or something. But it would not necessarily interfere with the substance of the truths of the story that made the audience feel satisfaction while watching it.
Yeah. That's why everyone hated the end of Game of Thrones. The story meant nothing the whole time. And
so I actually never saw it, but I can see that. I think that makes sense.
I haven't seen any. I've never seen any episode of Game of Thrones, because I figured out very quickly it was just high def pornography, and I did not feel the need to watch that.
Yeah.
But I just heard that people didn't like the ending.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing. And this is why it's important to remember that, again, you can't tell any story. And Hollywood and Netflix, right, these organizations people go to for story now, these institutions, they're sort of starting to realize that. But obviously they have very different incentives than people who are only interested in telling good stories have. So one thing I've been talking about is the fact that Netflix tells people who are making films for them, allegedly, that they need to write the film such that people don't actually need to see their TV to understand it, because they want to maximize watch time, and they know that people will listen to movies in the background while they do other things. So that, I mean, again, that's putting a profit motive above telling a good story. Yeah. That's not good for story. They also put ideology above telling a good story. What it used to be was telling a story which was good and then slipping a couple of things in there to confuse the audience. So Judd Apatow is phenomenal at this. Judd Apatow is amazing at this. Yeah, because his films like 40-Year-Old Virgin or Knocked Up, and I'm not recommending people watch these. Again, I saw these when I was younger. There is nudity in them, etc. You should not watch them. But 40-Year-Old Virgin is actually the story, spoiler alert, of a 40-year-old virgin who gets married and then loses his virginity. So he actually waits until he's married. Knocked Up is the story of a couple who, spoiler alert, right? They fornicate and she gets pregnant and they're both young and she's like a career woman and there's kind of this odd couple, but you know what? They decide they're going to make it work. They become a couple, have the child, right? So both of those stories, like on their face, are actually
good stories.
Yeah. But what does he do? Well, in Knocked Up, he makes it clear through certain dialogue, if they wanted the abortion, that would be fine. In 40-year-old version, it's made clear through the visuals and a lot of different jokes and what the other characters say that if he wanted to have sex outside of marriage, it would be fine. So often what they'll do, and I think Judd Apatow has very clear-cut examples, is they will try to tell stories that are good and wholesome. And I'm not saying Judd Apatow is doing this with any kind of agenda, by the way. If I were to guess, I would say he's just writing these stories because he thinks they're good stories, and maybe he feels a need to put this in because those are his values. He feels a need to say they could have an abortion. He feels the need to make clear that yes, you can have sex outside of marriage. But what other film did he make? What was an absolute flop? The rom-com about two gay men, right? Because at that film's base level, it just isn't right. The story isn't right, and it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And this is part of why the further the left moves to the left and the more they try to push their values through story, the less effective their art becomes. Because you need traditional value and you need truth for these stories to work. This is part of why people say the left can't meme, because comedy depends on like a shared understanding of things, and their worldview is so bizarre and requires so much reference before you can even understand what they're talking about that the jokes don't
except
work.
for the sensible leftists. I think we need to start turning the tables on that and start referring. Because for years it was like, finally a sensible conservative, and a lot of conservatives would run on that platform. I think we need to change. I need to
sensible.
I do this to one of my mutual followers on Twitter is Chris Hale. He's an Obama campaign guy. He ran for Congress, I think, once, and he's a good Catholic dude. I think he's pretty orthodox, but he is a pretty leftist guy. And so every time he says something that's kind of like critical of the far left, I go, finally a sensible leftist.
That's funny. But I guess the point I wanted to make is these traditional stories, these genres actually depend on a traditional understanding of things, or else the stories don't work. So you have to subvert them in small ways. And then if you try to subvert them in too large a way, it doesn't work. Again, a great example is romance. You need a man and a woman. And anyone who tells you that Brokeback Mountain was an effective romance film is completely out to lunch. That film was only effective as a punchline for 99% of people.
Absolutely.
The cultural impact that Brokeback Mountain had is when your buddy wears something that matches the aesthetic of a cowboy, you have some way to call him gay. That is what Brokeback Mountain gave to our lexicon. That's the only thing that film contributed ultimately. So left-wing art, if it's truly left-wing, if they're truly trying to push these boundaries, it's not as effective and it can't be effective. So that's part of why media just isn't as good anymore. But when they are sneaky and when it is effective, they're chipping away at your culture. That's why we're doing what we're doing. So far, we've raised a bit over 50% of the budget that we need to produce the first season of our show. And so that's incredible. We're under halfway in terms of the amount of time left in the campaign. So to be a bit over halfway in terms of the budget we raised is awesome. But obviously it's not something that we can just sit back and rest on. We do need your help. We really do need your help getting the show funded. I've got the team. I've got 11 years of experience. I've got the track record. If you give me your help, we will create the future of entertainment. And that's what we're doing. So go over to twistedplots.com. Support us at any level. You give $20, you will be able to watch the pilot. You give it any level, you'll be able to watch the pilot. But I want to encourage you to go over to twistedplots.com. Give us $20. Help us to win this thing. Help us to win the culture war. We can't do it if we're not making culture, and time is running out.
I can't say it any better.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah,
thank you.
The passion behind the project is evident, and I think you should everyone should go to Twisted Plots, just at least check it out. Consider donating and giving to support them, because animation's expensive. You mentioned there's like $1.5 million to make an episode of The Simpsons or something. Yeah.
So, but people you've seen South Park and you see how simple the animation is. You've seen, I imagine, season 1, how simple that animation was.
Oh yeah.
This was in 1997. It cost $250,000 per episode. And people go, how can it be that expensive? It's because you need a crew of multiple people working for months, and that ends up adding up. So we're going to be able to produce the entire first season of our show for the inflation-adjusted cost of one episode of season 1 South Park. So
Wow.
we've already produced the first episode. We're going to produce 4 more. That's going to be our season. These are going to be good stories. There are going to be good jokes. There's going to be a narrative that communicates an important moral value, but does so in a way which isn't preachy and which keeps you engaged and entertains you. It's made by people who don't hate you, who don't hate your values, and who aren't chipping away at your culture, who are actually trying to build the culture back up. And we do need your support. So go over to twistedplots.com. Don't take my word for it. If you donate, you'll be able to watch the pilot. You'll be able to see our first episode. And I believe you'll enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Seamus. Thanks so much for being on. Again, it was a pleasure.
Thank you.
I've wanted to interview you for a while because I know you're a solid dude, got a good head on your shoulders, and of course, you make some great stuff. So thanks so much, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Ever know how to close out a podcast? People stop listening.
No, that works. That what you did.
Sweet. All right, I'll stop.